Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
Is this going? Oh, was that part of it? All right. Well, there you go. How's that for a? All right, folks. You're on the Property Couch where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property, finance, and money management. I was trying to think if I was going to throw Christmas carols in there too, Ivis, but I thought that's just a little bit too complex based on your beautiful intro from last week.
Yeah. How good was that?
Mate,
how was the feedback?
The feedback was terrific, and I just think it's important to acknowledge, like, you and I just do this without worrying, but it was a big thing for you, Ivis, so we are very proud of you, so well done.
Yeah, it means a lot. Rock solid. Yeah, right here, Ivis, right here.
Right there, in the heart. But hey, there's a lot going on today. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We've got a special guest in the house. We've got the whole box and dice, Ben. But a couple of things to think of before. Obviously, it's a wonderful time of the year.
To
celebrate.
For most.
That's right.
There are a few who find it a bit difficult this time of the year when they lose loved ones, and we take a moment to think about you guys as well. But the vast majority of people are up and about.
It's a festive season, which is terrific. But we've had a terrific year on the couch, I've got to say. We've had so many wonderful milestones. We've interviewed so many wonderful guests. We pulled off August, Ben. You were you're a bit sceptical at the beginning of the month. By the end, even you were saying it. Which is terrific.
Guest. I just sceptical in the name, not necessarily in the talent that we had on the show.
The talent was amazing, but you were the creative department. You were having a couple of chippies.
Plenty.
And of course, the podcast is going to go right through, Ben. We've got a summer series coming. We did it last year.
Yep,
we've got a summer series coming up this year. And if people hang around to the end of our summer series, we're going to have a best of throughout January. But we're also going to refresh the pillars. So we're going to start the year with amazing foundations to have a wonderful 2018 for all of our listeners.
Love it.
So we're going to do the pillars as well.
Bit of a refresh.
But on my mindset minute today, Ben, is a segue into our guest today. Mm-hmm. The only thing that is constant is change. And so have you ever read that book by Dr. Spencer Johnson, Who Moved My Cheese?
I've heard of it. I've talked about the summry, but
it's a really wonderful business parable. And if you haven't checked it out, you could knock it over in an hour and a half. Yes. It's so quick and easy to read. Yep. But it's largely around change, right? Yep. No spoiler alert here, but it's about when people are used to things being the same and what happens if things change versus the people who get out there and proactive. There's a couple of key lessons that happen from the book, Ben, around change. They keep moving the cheese is part of it, which is you've got to anticipate change.
Yes.
Get ready for the cheese to move, which is about monitoring change. Mm-hmm. Smell the cheese often, so you know when it is getting old, so you can adapt to change quickly. The quicker you learn to let go of old cheese, the sooner you can enjoy new cheese, which is largely around change.
Yeah.
Move with the cheese, which is enjoy the change. And the last one, savour the adventure and enjoy the taste of new cheese. Be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again. And of course, our special guest today is Brad Beer, and he's going to be talking about the changes. Ben, you're wondering where the link was, weren't you?
I saw the link. Beautiful, nice segue.
So, and we're also going to talk about a topic that you're pretty keen to talk about.
Well, it's just important. I mean, it's everywhere out there. So, people might have a view of what our view on Bitcoin is. So, we'll share some insights into Bitcoin. But it's a really important topic, this change piece, mate. Mm-hmm. There's only three constant in life, isn't there? Death, taxes, and change. Mm-hmm. So, and we've got Australian society is we're struggling with this in terms of from a demographical point of view as well. Mm-hmm. So we have the baby boomers who are significant in portion. Mm-hmm. I think there's something like 5,000 of them a week turning 65. Mm-hmm. They're voters. And so we've got this problem where, the older you get, the less you like change. Mm-hmm. So we've got a bit of a problem in our politics at the moment where we've got people who don't like change versus all of this change flowing through and younger people who are getting impatient because we can't do change. So, I hope that people take a note of that in terms of baby boomers, we've had it pretty good. I'm an oldie now too. So we've all had it pretty good, you know. We had free education for the majority of it. But let the young people have a go. Don't think that you've got to hold on to some of those older traditions. If we're going to thrive into the new year and thrive into the new decade, we need to just be a little bit more open to this idea of change.
I'm seeing you as future Prime Minister, mate, I've got to say. But,
well, I don't. I can't remember anything and I wouldn't prep for it.
What are you saying they do?
Yeah, good point.
But I think our special guest today, Ben, would argue that the politicians have been involved in a fair bit of change. Yeah. So we had the 6'7" giant in the house in Bradley Beer from BMT Tax Depreciation. I brought that in, Brad, because last time you were on the couch, I said it wrong. So I learned from my mistakes. Don't commit it to memory. Make sure that you've got the paperwork here. But welcome, mate.
Great. I'm glad we've got it right this time. It's great to be here, guys, as always.
It's law, Bryce.
It's law.
It's law.
Yeah, well done. You go.
Bloody integrity measures, so-called integrity measures.
May the 9th is burnt in Brad's mind, and now it's in effect.
What date did it come into effect, Brad?
Look, May the 9th, 2017. Anyone who decided to buy something after 7:30 p.m. that night.
Yep, Australian Eastern Standard Time.
But when did the Senate pass it, finally?
Senate passed it at mid last month. It took them a couple of days of deliberation while they talked about lots of other things instead of that. And lots of grandstanding and things that we were watching in the office. It was very interesting.
So obviously we promised that we would get Brad back on once it became law, so we can talk through it, and basically that's what we're doing.
So, mate, let's go straight to it. Overview. What was there any deviation from the discussion from May the 9th to what was passed, or was it all as expected?
Very little deviation. Probably the only thing that was a little different was a developer's now been given up to about 6 months to sell something to still be seen as a brand new property. Developers must be good at lobbying or something there, I suppose. But
who gives the donations to the political? Sorry, I digress.
But if you think about the biggest developer in town, Harry Triggerbuff, that's important for him because he often develops a lot of stuff and holds it for a long time and then puts it on the market. Yeah. So that's saying if it's after 6 months, he can't do that.
So it's a fair thing to not make it all happen as soon as the first person moves in, as soon as the first unit's sold. Developers need to get rid of the end stock sometimes, and they've kind of got up to 6 months. It's still seen as a new property, and therefore they are not affected by the budget changes.
6 months from the day the title's issued, from the date it's available for sale. So that's something we probably need to look into, Ben. So we'll check that out.
So let me get this right, though. This is so after they announced it, they went into a consultation process, didn't they, Brad? And they asked for sort of input. And so what did we all do? We put my Pippa hat on. We put our input in, and Brad, I would have thought you'd put a little bit of input in.
Look, I felt like I'd moved to Canberra for a little while, and it was an interesting process in some ways where there's a lot of people involved in the decision-making process. And I almost had to go back to a bit of education because they didn't really understand, a lot of them, depreciation very well, but they're politicians. They're not experts in depreciation. Right. Someone's made a decision, there's votes going on there. So backwards and forwards, talking about a sensible way to maybe draft legislation. I was on the phone to Treasury a couple of days after the announcement, met with Treasury, proposed some alternatives that I thought made a little bit more sense than some of those things, which I guess, they've really kind of made their decision at the start, and the Treasurer kind of dug his heels in and said, we don't really want to change anything. People don't understand it very well, so let's leave it as it is.
So what got changed? Nothing. We put all these proposals in, but I think it's important for our listeners because it is a little bit more complex than a lot of people think. So what were some of the recommendations that you did put forward as part of your observation as a specialist in your field? Because I think it's important that, for those who are in property investment, to understand what we would think would have been more fair and reasonable as opposed to what we eventually got.
Look, I think the one thing that's really unusual is that when I buy an item of plant and equipment, and let's just take a sort of a simple example like the carpet in my investment property. The tax office puts an effective life on that carpet and says that carpet should last for 10 years. Now, a transaction shouldn't change whether or not that carpet lasts 10 years. What this has done is say that if your carpet's 1 year old You as the new purchaser, suddenly that carpet is worth zero. Now, really, regardless of a transaction, that carpet should have a 10-year effective life. There is a mechanism with the building allowance claims at the moment where a value is put on that item, being the property or the building itself. There shouldn't be a reason why, and it's actually not as hard as they thought to put a value on that carpet and carry that value for one amount of depreciation over its 10-year life. What they've done is gone, that may be a little difficult. And the reason they've done that is because the legislation from the past actually has some gaps in it where there's no clear methodology on putting a value on second-hand carpet. But it should go back to a historical cost for that carpet. When it was put in, it gets one life regardless of who owns it.
So let's make that clear. As an industry, we could do that very effectively, couldn't we? You know, and it wouldn't be that hard to do, but that would obviously mean that there'd be a little less revenue coming in to government, because obviously they, you know, that person who bought that second-hand property with 12-month-old carpet, who now no longer can get a depreciation, means that that revenue actually goes to the government.
It does change the revenue a little bit, but it doesn't change it substantially, in my belief, for what the amount of revenue they're talking about raising. The thing they have done that I do agree with is that they called it an integrity measure, and they're stopping someone from revaluing something that's old beyond its real life and putting a new value on that. It was a gap in the legislation. I agreed with it. Said that in my submission.
So did we.
And I think a lot of the revenue they're talking about comes from there, although there's no transparency on where the revenue is coming from.
But it is going to hit the bottom line.
It is very simple to come up with these values. If a value has been put on it from the start, it is already in the depreciation schedule that's been done. There's no new requirement at the transaction process to actually come up with new numbers then.
Okay. So let's summarise it. You eat, sleep and breathe depreciation. What about the listener who doesn't? In simple bullet points, what has effectively happened? So
effectively what has happened is whenever if you've entered into a contract to buy a property after budget night, you as a purchaser no longer get to put a value and claim of depreciation on a second-hand plant and equipment item or a used plant and equipment item. So
in residential property.
Residential properties only. Let's get to what's not affected after. So anything that's second-hand, that has second-hand plant and equipment, being carpets, hot water services, stoves, blinds, curtains, those things we would usually put some sort of value on them based on their age and condition. Now, if it's second-hand, you don't get to claim a deduction against whatever the value may have been, regardless of the age, 1 year, 5 years, 20 years. They've effectively said that the transaction of the carpet and stove, because it's now second-hand, gives it an effective value of zero. So no claims against those.
So Stig's, you should see Stig's face here, guys. It's a big, she's like one of those clowns, you know, that you put the ball in, big open. I can't believe that. She's just she just bought her investment property, and now she's like, I won't be able to claim that. She's got her first investment property, and now she won't be able to claim it.
We've definitely had a number of people, and I felt it was really bad. Someone's called up, and I've bought this unit, it's furnished, it's a little bit old, it's in cans. My mate had one last year, his depreciation was great, can I have one of those reports please? And I had to let him down very lightly and say, I'm sorry, but your deductions will be much less than what theirs were at the time.
Okay, so so that's a clear for established. What about this one here? What if I'm a flipper and I substantially renovate a property and purely for sale? Do I take on the characteristics of a developer in that scenario, or is it still deemed to be considered second-hand as soon as the transaction takes place on an established property?
So one thing they have, carved out in that sort of situation is that said that, and we'll get to all the things that are unaffected, and this is one of those. If you buy a property that someone has substantially renovated and sold to you, you'd say, well, the property is second-hand, the things in there still are new, so depreciation applies just like it used to. The definition of substantially renovated is a very small paragraph. So we go back and have a look at some other definitions they refer to around the around GST in the past, which means a cosmetic renovation is not substantially renovated. A kitchen and bathroom is actually seen as a cosmetic renovation. So if you buy it,
structural versus cosmetic,
you've got to start ripping out a couple of walls and do a substantial amount of renovation, add additions to the property, and you can't just do a kitchen, just a bathroom, just paint it, those sort of things. It's got to be a combination, some changing of walls, and there's a bit more definition around those things that need to happen.
Well, so that's so a really.
How are you going to define that? I mean, someone does a kitchen and bathroom, and then they just chop half a wall down.
A good flipper just does a kitchen and bathroom and paints, really, don't they? You know, to realise value. So,
that's
buying that won't necessarily get that depreciation.
Won't necessarily know. Now, one of the difficult things is until the ATO actually administers what Treasury has written, the answers. We've got a pretty good idea what the answers are, but there'll be some touch and go because it's not like you must have spent this much, you must have done exactly this. They use the word substantial renovation.
Gosh.
How much is a substantial amount of money? Yeah. Depends how much money you have sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if you're bypassing specialist companies like yourself and going to the accountant and claiming that you've done these things or you've acquired these assets and you want them depreciated, and if they are lazy or think no that's you've done a kitchen or a bathroom, that's substantial, and they put that into the ATO, they could come knocking.
Well, you wouldn't consider not using a specialist.
Well, you should use a specialist, but that's my point. Yeah. Use your specialists.
They could come knocking, and you want to make sure that your claims do stack in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that discussion segues into my next question: what wasn't affected?
Yes, very good question, and also we've got to go at the end of that of. What do you think about when you're buying properties in the future in regards to this? But what's not affected is anything non-residential. This only applies to residential properties. It only applies to second-hand residential properties. So if you buy a new property, house, unit, whatever, the rules are exactly the same as they were in the past. Same with any commercial property, the rules are exactly the same as they were in the past. The thing that also hasn't changed is the other component of depreciation, which is not called depreciation, it's called the capital works allowance, which is this component of the structure that you get to claim this deduction against. No changes to the rules around that. That deduction on a property makes up around 85 to 90% of the overall deductions in a property that are made for depreciation and capital allowances in the life of that property. So those things not affected, and also the substantially renovated properties not affected.
So that's 85 to 90%. So for the listeners again, don't just then say, I'm not going to do a depreciation schedule anymore, because depreciation equals cash flow.
Yep.
It absolutely equals cash flow. So if we're only talking about a small percentage of 10 or 15% of the cash flow loss we might get, there's still a huge amount of upside, and it should be really important that you continue to explore the idea of getting a depreciation schedule.
And the deductions that have been reduced are actually just some of those deductions in those early years.
Yeah.
So over the life, yes, we still get most of those deductions,
yep.
but there's just a few years there where it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
One other thing that's not affected is money that you spend on your property after you buy it. So you are buying new things in that property, plant and equipment.
Yep.
No effect on those because you've actually purchased the plant and equipment yourself.
Part of the cash.
Yes.
It's a cash deduction,
Part
not
of
a
the
non-cash
cash.
deduction.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a beware here, Ben, and
yes,
we're not going to have Brad comment on this, but for the sweet spot for depreciation remains brand new, right?
Yep.
So don't be seduced when making a decision about buying an investment property based on the sweet spot of depreciation, because fundamentally we wouldn't recommend that, despite the fact that that's the highest non-cash deductions that you can get in any residential transaction when you're buying in your own name.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we think about the models we do for our clients, and we've never allowed for depreciation because it's unique in each particular property. So, we think it's a fantastic value add in regards to it helps tremendously with cash flow, but because we're conservative in terms of doing that work around modelling for building portfolios, it was just really important. So I suppose we got a bit lucky in terms of not putting those in, but it's important.
Look, I am going to comment.
Cool, I didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot, but if you want to, go for it.
I'm the depreciation guy, right?
Yeah.
It's lived and breathed, and we do it all day, every day. But as a property investor on the other side of that, I say depreciation is not your reason to buy a particular property.
Correct.
There are so many other drivers on the way you're going to build wealth from property. I personally don't own a lot of high depreciation new properties.
What?
I've got old properties.
Well,
I've
everyone who's
properties.
seen Brad on your money
Actually,
will call.
It's a key point that the listeners are hearing right now.
It is imperative to look at the things that are going to grow wealth out of property and growth over time. One of the things that works with the property is the cash flow on the way through, obviously, as well, which depreciation is one number that impacts on that. Yes, I come up with that number. Yes, I like depreciation schedules, but it shouldn't be your sole reason for buying a particular property, tax-driven.
So that can be summarised pretty, Brad thinks every property investor should have a quantity surveyor's report, but not every investor should buy because of depreciation. Is that a fair summary?
That's a fair summary.
And can I have a dig at our good friends in Canberra? Because I don't mind having a go.
Tee off, mate.
Well, we're in a business, right? And we're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, yet we're being ostracised by Canberra, so-called integrity measures. Yet if I buy a commercial property, it's all good. Doesn't matter if it's second-hand. If I'm doing other things, same with the travel piece and all that. So what I'm passionate about, and Brad's also joined me on the picker board as well, and what we're passionate about is it's really important to understand that people in Canberra need to understand that we're in the business of providing this accommodation. We should be treated just like any other business operator. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we treated like any other business operator? Why are we singled out as being, a bad egg? Because we're trying to help provide good rental accommodation and, oh my God, forgive me for actually trying to create, financial well-being for my family.
Retirement.
So I'm less of a burden on government.
There's a spot on the couch. We've got a 3-seated arrangement in this studio for a reason. There's a spot for Scott. Mr. Morrison is allowed on the couch. We'd even have Brad back in there. We'd get an extra chair, an extra large chair, but it'll be an extra chair.
Don't get me wrong, the government's doing some good things. I mean, look at the latest unemployment numbers that came out last week. I mean, the economies, we are seeing jobs and growth. So, I'll give you credit where credit's due, but I'm definitely going to say we're getting singled out because it's a political conversation around housing affordability and so-called integrity measures, and because one or two political parties are talking about negative gearing and they think it's a revenue grab. So you'll hear me go on a little bit about this in the next 12 months.
Capital gains tax. Has any of this legislation change affected capital gains tax?
Good question, Bryce. And what they've done is made it, as they normally do, quite difficult.
It's just substantial. Any substantial change?
Substantial.
How many volumes of tax law are there now? There's something like 30 odd. Thousands. Oh my God.
And look, crazy. Capital gains tax legislation is quite difficult and does have some impact on a lot of personal circumstances, so it's not very cut and dry. Yeah. Like depreciation is, you get depreciation, if you've got income to write it off against, you might have to split it, but it's fairly simple to apply. But there's many things that are affected in capital gains tax. But the one thing that probably is important to note is that depending on your personal circumstances, the value of this plant and equipment at the purchase versus the value of this plant and equipment at the time the property's sold may have some impact on your CGT liability and your cost base.
Yeah.
Yes. But there is some intricacies around that legislation, so it doesn't work the same for everybody. But when we do a report now, we've designed depreciation schedules, different type of depreciation schedules. There's a few different ones now depending on what part of the legislation you fall under. It has the numbers in there depending on your situation as to what those numbers should be, separated into a separate section, easily adjusted at the end so the accountant can look at your situation, do whatever's right for CGT for you, because that's different for different people.
Right, I like it. Very well said. Hey, I've got 3 key related questions, Ben. So
go for it.
To finish off, bring it. The 101. What is depreciation? 2 is why do you fundamentally believe every single property investor should have a quantity surveyor's report instead of going straight to the accountant? And the third related question is why BMT, because we're fans on the couch here of BMT, but you're not the cheapest.
We're not
in
on
town.
the take here, by the way.
No, this is not
we
cash
don't,
for
we don't
comment,
get any.
but you're not the cheapest in town. So why should they go to the market leader where they're not going to get the cheapest report, but they're going to get the quality? So depreciation, why do they need a QS report, and why BMT?
Depreciation, fundamental, very simply, is a tax deduction for property investors. The building that you are using as an investment property is wearing out over time, and the tax office allows us, well, depending on some things now, to claim a deduction for wear and tear on the items in a building. Just like if you use a car for business, we all know cars go down in value pretty much all of the time. If you're using that car for business, you get to claim a depreciation against it. If you're using your property as a business, as we were discussing before, or as an investment property, these things are wearing out. Now, it's hard to understand sometimes because we're buying property for appreciation in value. What's depreciation? But you know what? We're wanting the property to go up in value, yes, but the carpet still wears out. The bricks and mortar one day are going to fall over, and the tax office allows to claim a deduction for that. What it means is reduces your other taxable income or the income from the property, and means some more cash flow for investors effectively.
Nice.
Why would you get a quantity survey to do a depreciation schedule, and when? This is a deduction that relates to construction cost of property. Legislation says that they'll accept the estimate done by a quantity surveyor for the purpose of these deductions. I'm a quantity surveyor, which means what we normally do for a job is we measure and estimate construction cost of buildings. So I can get a set of plans, count the bricks, and tell you how much it should cost to put those bricks there along everything else. So ATO compliance to make sure that if you do get audited, it stacks based on a number that's real. Followed by also knowing the rules. You've got to take your quantity surveying expertise, understand the tax law, and apply that to these quantity surveying rules at the same time, and maximise those deductions legitimately. Let's put everything we can.
Maximise those deductions legitimately.
Yes.
Maximise those deductions legitimately. That's the point, because accountant's he doesn't know, is it guesswork, and it could be short selling.
It's not guesswork, just not in the legislation to estimate.
Look, that's right, they're not estimators to start with.
Correct.
But as part of this process, we actually go and visit the property.
Yeah.
We can say, you know what, those bricks are pretty good bricks.
They're a good grade brick.
So when you actually get to see it, when you do that visit, you actually get to see the quality of what's there, and you're not scared as a quantity surveyor to put the right numbers on it. You're not making a conservative estimate. We work with the accountants. Most of our jobs are referred by accountants. The accountants send their client off who doesn't understand depreciation as well as they possibly should.
Hey, that's a key point. Lots of referrals are from accountants. So if the listener's thinking, why do I want to go to the accountant? The accountants are actually sending it to the specialists as well.
Yeah.
Most of the biggest referral source for our whole business has come from accountants. We don't pay the accountants anything. They just go, you need one of these, ring up Brad and his mates, and we have the people going, I need one of your things, quantity surveyor report. Good to be educated first, absolutely, which is what things like today are about. But the accountants we work with, we talk to them, we're not scared of, we're not fighting with the accountant, they're our friends. They get our reports, they use the numbers effectively. Why, things at BMT we've done differently over time, I suppose, is we've really learned how to make sure we're doing claiming the maximum deductions on properties all the time. The rules around depreciation are not simple. Traditional quantity surveyors don't always know how to do depreciation well. Learn the rules, make sure you apply them all. I see a lot of quantity surveyors reports that don't apply some of the legislation because it's hard to build it into your software. If the rule's there, we build it in, we help to maximise those deductions legitimately as the best we can. The whole business across the country, I have a couple of hundred staff, so we come out, we visit the properties wherever it is, with staff members that are trained properly to come through and do these depreciation schedules and check out the quality of those bricks. Make sure we find every item we can that's depreciable and help to maximise those deductions.
Now, success leaves clues. So 70,000 depreciation schedules last year.
You get pretty experienced if you're doing 70,000.
That says to us that success would leave clues. So if you're doing that sort of number, there's a good reason for that. And I think, the reason why we use them is the customer service is amazing, in addition to obviously maximising the best results for our clients.
And as you said, Ben, there is absolutely no cash for comment here.
Correct.
Brad is a friend of the couch. So the price isn't what's important here. It's the amount of deductions that you get that you then apply to your tax rate, which affects the amount of tax that you get back, which makes the differential between the price looks small. And just to show, there's two things. We've got on the Property Couch a BMT form that gives a discount. We get 0 referral fee from it. Zero referral. They don't pay referral fees to anyone. So, but if you want to take advantage of that, get the form and you'll get that discount.
Yeah, so I mean, mate, firstly, well done in getting through with your throat. I don't know whether it is. Because if you go to actually episode 117, where we do take a bit more of a deeper dive in depreciation, so it's all about education here. So take a deep dive into that other. You'll actually hear Brad with his normal voice. But don't worry, we've all been on the couch now where we've had a little bit of a crack. So well done, mate, in terms of doing that. We really appreciate it. And obviously, I'm delighted that Brad has accepted to join the board of Picker. He's has phenomenal experience in terms of how he's going to be able to add value, very successful in terms of what you've done as a property investor. And that's what we're focused here on. I mean, Picker is about an industry association for property investors, run by property investors, not run by industry or business. That's PIPA. And, if you're in the business of being in property investment and you're trying to provide services to investors, you are a member of PIPA. If you're a property investor, you're a member of Picker.
Can I say why that's a key appointment for Picker and for the integrity of Picker? Because Brad, his business has one of the most valuable databases in the entire industry, and he has made a career of finding ways to politely say to people that you cannot touch my database. And do you know what I mean? So for Picker's mission, where you're going to get a group of property investors, which I will definitely be one of them as a member, I want to know that I'm not going to be spammed by industry. And so you've got someone on the board who's got a 20-year history of making sure that his database hasn't been spammed. So I think that's a key appointment.
It is a key appointment.
I'm excited to see an organisation of Picker. I've just been through a situation where, if we talk about our advocacy, the property investor having a voice, I've just been through seeing what Canberra does sometimes, and the effect is on our business, yes, but it's an effect on the investor. I went in there agreeing with some of the things they said as a specialist, going, I'm all for good legislation. Let's build some good legislation. So I'm excited to see, and I'm joining as a property investor. I'm an avid property investor. I've loved it. I've done it. I've been through it. I've renovated. I've done so many.
Doing it.
I'm still doing it. Developing and little bits and pieces. And look, having a voice or a united voice to actually make sure some sensible legislation is built and some education for the buyers. I see a lot of people in my BMT time where, they just don't go in with enough education, crunching your numbers, doing the things you should do from the start. So let's get some education out there.
Correct. And, with scale and size, over 2.5 million property investors across Australia now, we will be invited to actually sit down. What we saw with the legislation was surprise legislation. We didn't see it coming. There was no consultation. No, but they probably argue, well, who do you still remember choking?
I was at budget night, choking on my steak when he read out those.
So there is a big point there in terms of maybe they thought there was no one for us to talk to. There was no association that they could. Now there will be one, and so we welcome government, we welcome opposition, we welcome anyone who's interested, regulators, legislators, state, federal, to open the conversation with it. We're seeing also stuff down here in Victoria around tenancy legislation. We are open to that. I mean, you heard me sort of doing a bit of political bashing earlier. It's not in jest. I'm really serious about let's have a conversation. Some of that legislation was sensible, but the vast majority of it is like, don't surprise us with that. Just bring it on board, which does give me a great little segue, Ivis, into letting everyone know that we are now taking memberships for Picker.
Yay.
So you can actually log on to picker.asn.au and you can give us your membership. You can become a member.
$20?
No, don't give me cash. Just get on site. It's all automated through that. So picker.asn.au. pica.asn.au. Jump on the site. Now, we've got an amazing introductory offer because we always, again, we want to get hundreds and thousands of members. This is a big initiative. It's the biggest we've seen in this space in Australia's history. So it's $5, Bryce. It's $5
it's a no-brainer.
For 1 year. Or we're giving an incentive. If you want to stay for longer, you can basically give us $20.
So $20 is how much?
$20 gives you 5 years membership.
5 years. That's
Now, if you are a business and you believe in what we're doing as well, it's $50 membership, okay, to join, or again $200 for 5 years membership. Now, if you're a husband and wife team, we'd love both of you because we're all about getting the numbers there to be that united voice. So $5 for each family member or $40 for the couple. We're taking those memberships now. And we've got a lot of announcements that will roll out of 2018 in terms of our initiatives and what we're doing. We're setting up our state councils. We're also setting up our area chapters. This is education, advocacy, awareness, all of those things wrapped up into one not-for-profit association.
Terrific stuff. Well done, guys. I think that's an enormous initiative. And of course, Ben, on the couch, you've heard everything you need to know about the new changes to depreciation. So,
mate, thanks for that, Brad. That was awesome.
Always great to be here. Thanks, guys.
And as Ben said before, check out episode 117 if you want to go and dive a bit deeper into the subject of depreciation.
And jump onto our website for other facts sheets and information, and also the discounts that are exclusive to the Property Couch listeners.
Mate, you didn't want to let this opportunity go before people went into Christmas to make sure that Bitcoin wasn't the present that sort of didn't keep on giving.
Yeah. And it might keep giving. We might be completely wrong in terms of what the fundamentals of Bitcoin tell us, in terms of... Because the challenge with Bitcoin is, what is it? And even the best people who are studying this don't quite know what it is. So, is it a store of value?
Is it?
Is it? Is it a currency?
Did you know?
Is it a currency? Or is it a payment platform to make payments transact? Could it be all three? Could it be a solution to make the unbanked banked? We don't know. And I think on that premise alone, there's a lot of excitement about it. In terms of the stuff behind it, i.e. the blockchain, smart contracts, very clever stuff. Very, very clever stuff. So is this a new era of digital, the world we're moving into around that? And so my worry with this is that because it's an unregulated marketplace, and because we had, Philip Lowe, Dr. Philip Lowe, our Reserve Governor, talking about this, and obviously the Reserve Governor in New Zealand, and we're starting to see some conversations around what this looks like, it's really important that we talk to it. So, it started out as, an idea, a concept of taking control away from government and potentially putting control into people of the world. Okay, so, in theory, it also looks quite amazing from that point of view that we could have people transacting without the need. And we look at, WeChat and all of these other sort of platforms. They don't use banks. They don't, they ultimately are a payment platform. In fact, the Chinese don't even use email. They don't. Everything's on WeChat. So, and we're talking about trillions of dollars in transactions. I think the last one I heard, and don't quote me exactly on this, but I thought it was something along the lines of $5 trillion has been transacted on WeChat.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's
a lot of money. So all of this is coming into this whole cryptocurrency space and initial coin offerings and those types of things. But I just feel that, in terms of the growth of its value, considering what under supports it, what is its intrinsic value, what does it deliver? There's 21 million Bitcoins. My understanding is they're mining around 1,500 a day. It requires an enormous amount of power, and that's why they're moving some of these mining operations into countries where it's cheap, where power is cheap, because we're talking about large integrated networks of computers basically churning this chain and trying to mine, because they're worth a lot of money now. So that's the challenge with that. And we have seen on its journey, we have seen 40, 50, 60, 70% corrections on its journey, and it still continues to go on this trajectory that is just unheard of, mate. Unheard of. So, but what I feel is happening is like pennies in the dollar for people, in the sense that when it was $6,000 and it was growing quickly, people were like, $6,000. I can have a punt on $6,000, and then the next wealthier ladder up saying, $15,000. I can have a punt on $15,000. And we might be sitting here and it might be $100,000 in 6 months' time. And we might be going, gee, those blokes were clever. But I just don't know where it ends up. That's the big worry for me. So
you said it's unheard of. There may have been precedent, I think, back in the 16th century.
Yeah, that's
Tulip mania.
Yeah.
For those of you not familiar with that, there was a very specific type of tulip that they were after. Had a little bleed that went through the tulip, and it was only able to grow at a certain period of time. So it's where I think it was the first futures currency where they said futures transaction where they said you can enter into a contract for a future supply of these tulips because it would have been November and they only go through that gestation period between March and May, whatever the specifics were. So all of a sudden people wanted these particular tulips. And then over time, it became a bubble of sorts because people were then all of a sudden forgetting the underlying value of the tulips. It was just everyone had that contagion on the way up. So, and I think the point that because I don't know much about cryptocurrency, going to be honest, I haven't tuned into it, but clearly everyone is talking about it. But as you say, it's the thing I said to you is doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. If it continues to go up, shouldn't everyone jump on? But your point was, but it's a pretty big risk at 15,000 or whatever it is. If it doesn't, if you're the one that gets on the top of it, so
correct.
But the chances are, like you say, it'll continue to go.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum is another currency which is also growing quite rapidly, and it's Ethereum is a little bit different, and so again, this is no recommendation, but Ethereum has a bit more utility, which means, so take for example, if you were to buy a coffee, right, and use Bitcoin, potentially that transaction, which connects to the blockchain and basically which is a ledger, and then makes that transaction take place, that can take as much as half a day to a full day. Now, transactions can't move, that sort of speed of transaction is too slow for it to have utility in a sense. And so that's the big question around the blockchain, and I suspect it'll get better. And Ethereum is one of those ones which it seems to be a bit quicker, and they're talking about increasing that speed. Now, if you have that speed, you potentially have utility as well as record and ledger and all those types of things. So that could be an interesting one to watch. But ultimately, I'd be saying to most people is you don't know. And if Warren Buffett doesn't invest in anything he doesn't understand, he's called this a complete scam. He's also out there saying it's a fraud. So there's quite a few people who, and I don't care which camp you're in. All I'm just saying is be careful. Be careful out there. It's not easy to do.
There's a movie out now which Robert De Niro is starring as Bernie Madoff with the behind the scenes on the Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's worth sort of seeing what the facade of that looked amazing.
Correct.
And the point of view that you get on that movie is really insightful. But I'm certainly happy to put my hand up here, mate. I'm certainly the cryptocurrency amateur in the room here, but it's clearly something that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, look, and I'll continue to keep watching it. We've got a couple of people in our team who are playing in the Bitcoin space and also the Ethereum space. So it's of interest because it potentially is a wealth creation vehicle like gold, silver, and those other things, and it potentially might have a lot more to run. So, but before you decide to make an investment, you need to thoroughly research, just like we ask you to do with property. Okay. So there you go, mate.
Very good. Good insights. Today, as we sign up in my life hack, as you're probably scrambling for your Did You Know notes.
Yes, right I better get them ready.
Yes. We caught up with the good doctor. I was going to say the good doctor, the chief inventor over at
I like that.
Yeah,
chief inventor.
Well, it's because we had the white lab coats on. Remember? And if you haven't seen that, check out our socials. But he dialed me into something that I wasn't quite tapped into because I've got this life hack, and I can't remember if I've done it on the podcast before, so it's a freebie if I haven't. But whenever I get a book recommendation, instead of writing a note, I should get that book, I just go into iBooks, I get the book, I download the sample, and then later on I just go back to my samples and go, maybe I'll check that one.
Awesome.
His life hack is buy the book in Kindle, which you can actually do the same thing, get the sample.
Okay.
But then when you buy it in Kindle, it's sometimes only a couple of extra bucks to upgrade to get the audiobook version.
Okay.
So, which is
good for those of you who can't read and drive at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
But as we're going through the holiday season, people have got the caravan on the back, they've got the boats on the back, they're going for long drives. It could be a good way to get through some books.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a timely life hack.
Yeah.
At this
Walks
point
on
in
the
time.
beach, and that'll be me.
And thanks thanks to the chief inventor,
Nigel
Dalton.
Yep, thank you, Nigel.
From REA for that little tip. So I've started hooking into that one. So, did you know?
Well, I thought we'd go into the Christmas spirit.
Yeah,
all right.
I like the theme.
But I'm going to lead off with a little controversial one.
Well,
Christmas, supposedly marks the birth of Jesus Christ on the 25th of December.
You're not going to go dangerous territory here, are you?
The reality is that there's no mention of the 25th of December in the Bible. And most historians actually believe he was born in spring. So there you go, everyone.
You're on your own on that one, buddy.
So that's the first one that we've got there.
That's all, Ben. I'm happy to acknowledge that the manger was on the 25th of December.
Yeah, well, just go and check your records there. I think people might... Now, Jingle Bells.
The most sold book in history. It doesn't even appear on the #1 list anymore.
Well,
so that's messing with a bit of
form. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there was no reference to the 25th of December. We think that he was born in spring. There you go. Okay, next one. I like these ones. I've got a little series here in terms of after his death, the legend of St. Nicholas spread, right? So St. Nick's name first became Sint Nicolaas in Dutch, or Sinterklaas for short, which with a hop, skip and a jump became Santa Claus.
Love it.
So that one's a nice little one there. So
it sounded like he's going back to sign-offs.
Little clap.
Sign-offs. Did you see that?
Little clap there from Ivers.
Yeah.
Next one we've got here. The look of Santa Claus, who we have today, was created in 1804. Meeting of New York Historian Society, where member John Pintard handed out wooden, basically cutouts of jolly old St. Nick.
Right.
In front of stockings filled with toys.
Nice.
So that's an interesting one in terms of the look of Santa Claus. However, through Santa Claus was originally in blue and white and green in the past. This is where it gets really interesting. His traditional red suit came from the 1930s ad by Coca-Cola. And I've got a little picture to show you there as well. So that's where the change occurred. Mm. So originally he was in blue, so blue and white or green in the past.
Yeah.
Now the traditional Santa Claus outfit, which is red and white, actually came from an ad by Coca-Cola.
Gee, what you think they'd be getting a bit more leverage on that?
That's maybe they should trademark it. Trademark the suit.
Yeah.
And finally,
there's another one.
Jingle Bells.
Awesome.
Did I mention about Jingle Bells?
No, you didn't mention it at all.
Jingle Bell, Jingle. You know that song there?
It was I'm familiar with it.
It was originally written as a Thanksgiving song.
Okay.
But because Thanksgiving's pretty close to Christmas, maybe the song took off, hit the charts, and effectively we have Jingle Bells as part of Christmas.
What about the bit where it goes on a one-horse open sleigh? Where's that for Thanksgiving?
Well, again.
Well, it's all if it's on Google, mate. It can't be wrong.
Google tells me these things. Yeah, that's where we live. So no, Jingle Bells was originally supposed to be a Thanksgiving song, and maybe when you give thanks, you can still be on a sleigh. Who knows? Maybe they changed the words, but there you go.
Very good, mate.
Did you know for Christmas?
I didn't know that, mate. I think they're very even if they're not true, mate. There's a fair bit in there to digest.
Chuckle to go and tell those at the dinner party or Christmas lunch party.
Exactly.
There's a few other there, so that came from. I suppose I should reveal the source because it's important that if I'm getting these types
I'll obviously put the source up for you.
We'll put the link up to give credit. 31 facts you did not know about Christmas.
Yeah. No,
there we go.
So the answer is I did not know. But there you go, folks. It's been a terrific year having you on the couch. There's one more episode left, Ben, and we're going to give people just a sobering think about some of the negative headlines next week. It's actually we're going to take the message down, but we're going to certainly give people some hope.
Yeah.
Hopefully, give some people some hope.
Well, the doomsdayers and the bubble stuff. I think we'll talk more about tulips and a few other things in there as well. So yeah, that's good in terms of what it looks like. So yeah, really good stuff.
Very good. But there you go, folks. From Ivers, Ben and myself signing off before Christmas, before the festive season. We hope you have a really great time with your family. And as Ben said, think of those who are less fortunate than us. And we'll see you next week. Until next week, Ben.
Remember, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Exactly.
Just got it in there.
All right, folks. Have a great Christmas. See ya.